We're going to get started here in just a moment. Appreciate you all joining us this morning. We made a little migration over here to the Discord. Hopefully audio quality is much improved compared to last week, if you, or 2 weeks ago rather, if you happen to pop in to catch us with Nethermind. We're going to go ahead and start here again at the top of the hour in just a couple minutes. So y'all sit tight, GM everybody. We're going to get started with episode number 4. We have GitPOAP joining us. We got great news from around the ecosystem, so sit tight, and we're going to get started in just a moment. I see all y'all with us. GM once again. Dosh in the house, brother. Hope you got some good sleep and are recovering. Chris Dow, Mr. Specs, Aliabo Baby. If I mispronounce your handler name, my apologies in advance. Armagon with us. Guest user, indeed. GM, sir. YK Player 8. We're going to get started here. John with us as well here. If you'd like to hop on the stage to add anything along the way, of course, welcome to have you up here with me. I think perhaps John Dosh might join us for the back portion of today's DAOcast to talk about all the latest stuff from around the Gnosis chain ecosystem. We're going to get started here first, as we've done for the last few episodes, with a guest chatting about some project that is doing something awesome, and we happen to have GitPOAP going to be joining us today. So I do not see Cole with us yet. As soon as he arrives here, we'll bring him up on stage and we'll get chatting about GitPOAP. If you've heard of it before, you're going to get a chance to ask questions. If you haven't heard of it, you're going to learn something new today. Very cool project here, building in the bear. You heard of POAPs. This is a very interesting application. So I see Billy has also joined the house. GM, sir, glad you found us over here in Discord. I guess I could use this time just to do a bit of housekeeping while we're getting started here, waiting for Colfax to join us. We are on episode number 4 right now, as I've mentioned, of the DAOcast. We did the first 3 in Twitter Spaces. At the last one, we had some serious audio issues we'd rather not repeat. So we've migrated over here to the Discord. But all of you should know that we are also piping the audio from today's broadcast over through OBS with some visual overlays, and a little later in the program, some actual slides that have all sorts of great snippets, assets from the newsletter, from Twitter, and we got all those to share with you a little bit later today. That is all streaming over on YouTube. So while we're waiting for Colfax to hop up on stage here, I encourage you to head over to YouTube and Google Gnosis Chain. Make sure to subscribe, hit that bell notification. You'll get pinged every time we go live here on a bi-weekly basis. I believe we'll continue with this setup here in the Discord, streaming over to YouTube. We may experiment with a dual stream to Twitter, but we shall see. GM again, once again, to everybody who's joining us here, people filing in. We got a great show in store for you today. I want to ask that you, of course, also check out the Gnosis Chain newsletter on Substack. If you haven't had a chance to do so, make sure you subscribe. Gnosis Chain on Twitter. And let's go ahead and get Colfax up on stage. GM, sir, I see you've joined us. I'm going to extend the invitation.
What up, what up?
Hey, GM, sir, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I can't complain. You know, what a crazy couple weeks.
Yeah, no kidding. Oh my gosh.
10 days and kind of a blur. I don't know about you.
No kidding. Yeah, yeah, aside from all the craziness, things have been pretty darn good, I'd say. Yeah, life is good. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, happy you could join us. And yeah, let's get straight into it for GitPOAP, man. I mean, first, I'd love to hear, I'm sure the good people in the audience would love to hear a little bit about you, maybe sort of your background, how you got into the crypto space, and then maybe an origin story. I'd love to hear it for GitPOAP. What inspired you to get this project rolling, and what are the aspirations?
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess I'll zoom back a little bit. So yeah, my name's Colfax. I live in Boston, Massachusetts, and yeah, I've spent most of my career developing software. So like I have a software background. I spent a number of years at Bloomberg in New York City doing like financial software, dealing with financial data. And kind of this sort of all leads up into why I ended up starting GitPOAP. But I was generally familiar with sort of the blockchain ecosystem, Web3, et cetera, starting around 2013. But it never really like super caught my interest. And then around sort of like the 2017, 2018 sort of like bubble and everything, I got more familiar with what's going on. That's kind of around the time that I learned about Ethereum as opposed to just like Bitcoin and things, and started to see how things could be useful. But again, like I was pretty focused on my job, and we had like a blockchain meetup group within the company where we do fun things. We actually had a hackathon where we built applications on Ethereum, which was a lot of fun. But like sort of this whole ecosystem is very much just like a side interest for me, and it wasn't like a full-time focus. And that all changed, I guess, towards the end of 2020, when I actually left Bloomberg the summer of 2020, kind of just wanting to take some time and like, enjoyed what I did at Bloomberg, but it wasn't what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. And I really wanted to work on something that I was like super passionate about and found like super meaningful and really like meaningful for people. And there is a lot of meaning to data transparency and data accessibility, which Bloomberg provides, but it wasn't the thing that I specifically wanted to continue to focus on. And so I ended up leaving Bloomberg and spent about a month fishing, which is a passion of mine. And so I took a little bit of break. And then after that, I was like, yeah, like I wonder what's going on with Ethereum and like proof of stake. I always thought that was interesting, and like infrastructure, software infrastructure is interesting. And I basically ended up getting involved in this community called ETH Staker, and around like educating people on how to stake and building tools to make it easier and things. And yeah, I sort of went over the course of a couple months. I went from like still on the sidelines of Ethereum to like diving in like head first.
I got it. So now you are a technician of sorts. Like, do you have you've experienced coding up software?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. So I have a background. I studied computer science in college, and I spent most of my career writing software. So
Very good. Now, and so you're in Boston right now. I'm on the East Coast as well. So GM to fellow East Coasters here, and everybody else who's joining us. Now we have GitPOAP with us today, and Colfax is nice enough to join us here, telling us a little bit about his background and how it led to the founding of GitPOAP. So you're at ETH Staker, and what then sort of inspired you to dive into the reputation, sort of on-chain reputation niche?
yeah, good question. So I started just first, I learned how to set up my validator from ETHStaker, and then I started seeing if I could help other people set up their validators and sort of give back to the community. And that kind of there's just like a common theme of conversation around like we can give support and write guides for people to set up their validators, but there's still a technical barrier. And like we can do a whole lot more for people to make it easier by building tools that help people actually install their validator like automatically. So like imagine if we had just like a one-click installer. And I was like, I know how to write some software. Like I think this is a cool idea too. Like why don't I start working on it? So there were a few others in the group that thought this was cool too, and also had like a software background or a design background. And so we started working together on building some open source staking tools, specifically around like installing your validator, creating your keys, et cetera, et cetera. And in doing that, I learned sort of like firsthand a lot about like open source software and like how do you grow a project? How do you bootstrap it? How do you get people to contribute? How can you sustain it? How do you get funding, or with lack of funding, like how do you keep your project going and things like that? And so that directly led to my trying to like find a way that I could give like some sort of form of recognition or like appreciation to people who are contributing to the project without having any like money. So like I'd love to like make some swag or like some t-shirts and like mail it to them, but I didn't like have any money back in the project or anything. So I started handing out POAPs to everybody who would participate and contribute to my project. And that sort of served as a small token of appreciation for anybody who spent time working on the project. And then also it serves as like a sort of a verified like piece of recognition for that person that then they can take with them, and they can be like, yeah, you know, like I contributed to the Wagyu keygen project. And that was sort of like the seedling that started getting me thinking about reputation, open source, and that whole area of thinking.
Very interesting. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody in the audience is familiar with POAPs, and everybody has perhaps a little bit of a different experience with POAPs because they're such a fascinating and flexible tool. You know, and some have had great success, and I feel like the way that GitPOAP goes about utilizing, you know, the easy access and easy distribution NFT component of POAPs with something that is very specific and measured and like a certificate of completion rather than simply showing up for a call. Like, I guess there's all sorts of different ways to experiment with it, but you seem to have taken a very specific direction.
Exactly. Yeah. So the way that I like to think about it is POAPs are useful for so many things. I've made them for birthday parties and community calls and all sorts of things. And what we're focusing on is using POAP as a way to recognize and commemorate contributions, and using it as a great tool to like give this attestation. And like all Git POAPs are earned by contributing to a project. So they're still very like POAPs are still very useful for all the other use cases, but I hadn't seen them used quite as much for like that. And I'm excited that we're now kind of expanding and developing a deeper use case for POAP with regard to like contribution recognition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember having some of these conversations even a few months ago with, I don't know, with Dosh and others in the audience with regards to, you know, when it comes to the POAP specifically, you know, what is the scope for utilization? And I like to see things as wide as possible. Have you encountered any pushback from people who would say, oh, it's proof of attendance, so you're sort of, you know, using it in a way that extends value? And this wouldn't be my argument. I'm just curious to know the conversations you've had in and around perhaps just POAP itself and the way you guys are applying it. Just curious to hear a little about those conversations if you happen to have had them.
Yeah, definitely. I think the original, of course, the name proof of attendance protocol signifies like attendance or in-person attendance. And I think like throughout COVID, POAP started being used for so many other things beyond just in-person attendance. So it kind of like the use cases of POAP kind of outgrew the original, I guess, acronym. And then a lot of what I've seen a lot and what's on the website is sort of thinking about POAP as bookmarks of your life, which I think is a really cool generalization of like how can we like what POAP really means and what it really is. And so in that vein, like bookmarks of your life can take any shape or form. And a lot of what people like a big component of what people's lives is what people do for work or even for fun in a contributing sense to like different projects and things. So I think it's definitely like a natural sort of extension or broadening of POAP as a use case. But yeah, when I'm introducing people to POAP and the concept, a lot of people have this thing in their mind about POAP is only for attendance. And so they have trouble sort of thinking about things in this different way. But I hope like sort of as time goes on and as more people are using POAPs for different things and there are more ways to showcase your POAPs and use them for many different things in the future, I think like sort of POAP as a generalized attestation tool for anything that's like meaningful in your life, that will sort of become like a very common, if it isn't already, conception of like how POAP is useful.
Absolutely, man. I love it. And it's just to sort of build on what I'm hearing you describe. And I still remember the first time I encountered this slogan, bookmarks of your life. That was actually a real great hook. I still, it's a great slogan. And the user experience, I guess, particularly on their mobile app is, I don't know, is what I think a lot of crypto will probably move towards, in the sense that people know that they can collect these NFTs, but the fact that it's running on Gnosis chain, or that it's minting on Gnosis chain, is entirely sort of abstracted from the user experience. And for all the people here, if you don't know, right, POAP has been one of the super OGs on the chain here. But yeah, super bullish on POAP. I love it. We've used it in the past, and I think it's really, really super fantastic. I guess my next question would be then, for people who are just encountering GitPOAP for the first time. Maybe they're here in the audience, maybe they're listening after the fact, and they're going to go to gitpoap.io for the first time. What would you say? They know what POAP means. What would you say is the main difference then between what you're doing with GitPOAP and sort of the broader POAP ecosystem?
Yeah, that's another great question I get a lot. So Git POAPs under the hood are POAPs. So every Git POAP, or everything that you hear about as a Git POAP, really is a POAP under the hood. And they show up in everyone's POAP collection outside of Git POAP and everything. One thing that you do know, though, is that if something is a Git POAP, it is a representation of a contribution that somebody's made. And so if you look at somebody's POAP collection, they could have lots of POAPs. They can mean any sort of different things. Like there's the classic, like, you've met me at a conference POAP, which I think is really useful and a really cool application of POAP as well. When you're looking at Git POAPs, you know that it's a contribution. And that's sort of the differentiator. Also, something we've done to help distinguish Git POAPs in the broader POAP set is all Git POAPs are surrounded by this hexagonal sort of template. And I don't know, can I share my screen on this?
Unfortunately, I don't believe from this stage. If somebody in the Gnosis
It's
community
all
correct
good.
me, but if you have a link, if you have a link, what I can do is I'll forward it to the fellow who's streaming this on YouTube, and he might be able to get some of the slides up for the recording. So definitely shoot me the link, and we'll see what we can do.
Sounds good. I will just shoot you a link to the 2022 ethereum.org Git POAP.
Sweet.
Just, I want to highlight sort of the design element. So one thing that we do is we want Git POAPs to be able to stand out in a collection of POAPs, just so people can understand which ones are for contributions and which ones are just like other general POAPs. And so all Git POAPs have this hexagonal border around them. And so it's still a round image. On our site, we actually crop it. But whenever you're looking at somebody's POAP collection, you can see the ones that are Git POAPs or contribution based on the border that they have. And so, yeah, I guess that's like the primary differentiator for Git POAPs versus other types of POAPs. And yeah, I can talk a little bit more about like what types of contributions and stuff you can earn them for, but I'll wait to dive into that.
Yeah. Okay. So just to recap, you obviously have the association between GitPOAP and specific tasks that, at least, in the first iteration, I know you have an update that we'll share about customization, but in the original GitPOAP iteration, it was for tasks completed or linked to a contributor's GitHub, correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the first iteration of GitPOAP, all GitPOAPs were earned by contributing software on GitHub.
Got it. And then the recipient would have, essentially, as you mentioned, under the hood, a POAP, but it does have this unique visual orientation to signify that it's a part of the Git POAP project.
Exactly. Yep.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to share in terms of the early aspirations, or in terms of the early inspiration for Git POAP, but I can see that it's evolved quite a bit over time. So like, when precisely did you more or less found the project, and maybe can you help us understand like the arc of the evolution since you founded?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, zooming back to what I was talking about before with these open source staking tools and giving out POAPs myself, I had an Excel spreadsheet where I'd keep track of who's gotten their POAP, who hasn't. And over time, it started truthfully just getting to be kind of an annoying process to do manually. And so I was thinking like, oh, I should like automate this and like make a script. And then who knows, maybe somebody else would be able to use it to award POAPs on their repos. And then like I started really thinking about it. And around that time, I got to know Patricio pretty well, the founder of POAP, and some other people in the ecosystem that were thinking about the same thing. Like Ethereum.org, for example, has been awarding POAPs on their repo for a while. And we started sort of just thinking about what this concept at scale would look like and how it could benefit projects, and how like the concept of like bringing contributions on chain could be really useful. And then what we can do with that. So imagine now, so actually just in October, there was DevCon. And DevCon, in order to select the builders for getting the builder discount ticket, they actually looked at your POAP collection to see what you've done in the ecosystem. And they gave you priority if you had POAPs that signified contributions to the ecosystem. And so things like that, we started thinking like, okay, at scale, like building this into a real platform could add a lot of value and be really helpful for projects and the general ecosystem. And so over sort of the next couple months, it turned into this like sort of side project that I was thinking about automating to, hey, like let's turn this into a real company and let's like build out this platform and make it so that anybody can really use it.
I got it. I mean, you have a lot of really big name partners here that have worked with you all. What are some of the highlights there? What are some of the projects that stick out as the most memorable? Perhaps ones that people can go check out on your website.
Yeah, definitely. So in our launch, as I've mentioned, like we focused on open source software projects at the beginning to recognize contributions to those, specifically sort of in the Web3, like Ethereum ecosystem. And we've now onboarded a whole bunch of projects. I think we actually just hit 1,000 repos yesterday. And in doing this, so really focusing on like Web3 open source, one in particular that's been exciting is Ethereum.org. They were kind of like pioneers in awarding POAPs for open source software contributions. And so they helped us sort of just think through like the right ways to award them, and some good advice there, and very excited to be working with them. I'm also excited to be supporting a lot of Gnosis Chain projects. So Gnosis Chain World, Block Scout, like a whole bunch of projects in the Gnosis Chain ecosystem. It's been really exciting because like POAP and GitPOAP, of course, exist on Gnosis Chain, and like it's an amazing ecosystem that I'm really happy to be a part of. And I really hope that like GitPOAP can be useful not only to the broader sphere, but like to the infrastructure that we're building on. So I would say those are like two particular ones that I've been excited about that we're working with.
Very cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that obviously this is it's sort of a Gnosis Chain native trifecta we have, right? If it's a Gnosis Chain project, get POAP and POAP enabling it. It's pretty awesome. I'd like to kind of, again, zoom out again for a second to get, or I guess zoom in, zoom out. I'd like to get into the fundamentals of like on-chain reputation. Like, what do you feel the main value is here? And, you know, thinking forward, what can this be in 2 to 3 years from now, 5 to 10? I mean, what's the bigger picture that you envision?
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff, and I think some stuff is like obvious and apparent now, and I think a lot of stuff will come up over the next couple of years as like being useful. That's not clear yet. One thing in particular, I think just like the ability to have a verified record of the contributions that you've made to different projects, I think is really valuable, just in the sense of being able to like showcase the work and the value that you've added. In my time, like with ETHStaker and like working on these open source projects, I was like, oh man, like if I wanted to go apply for a job, like I'm not working for anybody technically. So like, how am I going to prove to somebody that I've been adding value, even though I'm just like working on these open source projects? And so I think there's, yeah, definitely like a lot of value in people being able to build up a record of what they've done. And then furthermore, it's verified. So like issued as POAPs, like you can't fake it. Like we ensure that you only get the POAP if you've actually contributed to the project. Whereas like, for example, like on your resume or like on your LinkedIn profile, presumably you could type anything in that you want there. I'm sure it'll probably catch up to you in the future, but like having this verified record too opens up a lot from a showcasing standpoint. But then other things like I was talking about with the conference, like now we have this like queryable unified record of what everybody's doing, right? And so that can be used for other interesting use cases on top of just like showcasing. But now we have this unified record that can be an input into a whole bunch of different things. So like priority access to concerts, maybe concerts too, conferences, of course. People are talking about using GitPOAPs as a component of governance in their DAOs. So this on-chain record of contribution can possibly be used for voting. We actually just announced our snapshot integration yesterday. So I'm excited to see what people do with that. And possibly, I want to build more actually like on-chain DAO tooling on Gnosis chain as well in the future. And I guess the last thing that I want to mention is, and I'm curious to hear what you have to think about this as well, because I think there's a lot to be seen still. The last thing that I'm particularly excited about is like the impact that verified contributions on chain and reputation can have on funding projects. So now that we have this record of who's contributing, if we wanted to fund a project, we know exactly who to send money to. And so I think that this could be like a nice building block in the broader challenge of like funding open source and public goods.
Yeah, I really like that last point in particular. I mean, it's almost from a funder's perspective, or if a project is coming to seek ecosystem funding from a DAO, whatever it might be. Yeah, I mean, imagining that team can link to this GitPOAP record of their contributors, right? So it's like a very easy way to also get a read on the quality of the team, like right away, just by looking at the work they've done. Really, that's really cool. I mean, obviously you could go to their GitHub, but it's a very nice sort of top line resume type thing. I got a quick question though. So about the POAPs and its relationship to this professional credentialing almost, or CV building on chain. What's your take on transferable versus non-transferable or soul-bound tokens in this case?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say like from like an ethos standpoint, POAPs are like effectively ethos-wise like soul-bound tokens in the absence of like a proper standard. So POAPs are transferable. But like in terms of like them being attestations of what you've done, like the ethos of that is that it's sort of tied to you as a human. But they're transferable right now. So somebody could definitely send them to somebody or sell them on OpenSea. And so given the lack of a robust, like soulbound tokens also are like much more, they need to be much more than just non-transferable tokens. And so in the absence of a robust standard that's usable right now, I totally understand. Like, I think it's actually there's one of possibly many right solutions just to have like transferable tokens. And then we can handle things like transfers. For example, blockchains are transparent, so we can see if something's been transferred. And then we can either invalidate it or we can handle it differently. For GitPOAP, this is an active conversation around like, okay, so if your GitPOAPs have been transferred, then maybe we'll have you re-verify that you are in control of your GitHub account to like sort of revalidate the fact that it's still owned by the same person. And I imagine like sort of as soulbound tokens standards and actually like ways that we can implement them better evolve over time, like we'll migrate to whatever the best standard is. But for now, very focused on sort of building with the tools that are available and handling the challenges as we see them.
Yeah, totally. I mean, in a case like this, if I were doing due diligence and looking at GitPOAPs as a means for doing so, any transference would be a red flag, So it's almost like, as you're saying, the ethos is sort of built in, and anyone who's really using them as a way to perform that due diligence, and well, on the other side, anybody who's submitting them for the research to be done and verification on their own work obviously wouldn't want to have that on their record. And as you say, everything is public and easy to see. Because obviously there's pitfalls with the soulbound token side as well, right? Like it's we're still all just experimenting with this. I know a lot of people are looking at doing reputation in different ways. I just think it's brilliant building on top of something that has such a great reputation and history in the space as POAP.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that was very intentional and purposeful on our point to build on top of POAP as opposed to building our own standard for many reasons. One, there's just such a vibrant POAP ecosystem. There's so many integrations already. People love POAPs. People know what they are as the concept, and people's minds are expanding on like what the concept can be, like we talked about earlier. But yeah, it was a very natural, logical thing for us to build on top of POAP. And then the other benefit too is like POAPs being effectively soulbound tokens that are transferable. Like the entire POAP ecosystem is going to need to think about like how do we think about soulbound tokens and POAPs and things like that. And so like we're not on our own island thinking about how are we going to do that for GitPOAPs, but really like we have partners in POAP, of course, to like figure out what's the best solution for POAP as a whole. So very grateful to be building on top of POAP and just collaborate with the team so much.
Totally. I remember this was, again, it's been months since I was doing this, but the last time we were creating POAPs, I mean, yeah, they were working crazy hours just to keep up with all the requests. So I got to believe that projects like GitPOAP that are really, sort of curating distribution are a huge asset to what they're doing. I want to give you the floor to talk about the update, the latest update here with custom GitPOAPs. I know that that's the big announcement for the GitPOAP project. So walk us through it, man. Where did you get the idea for these custom GitPOAPs, and then maybe what might people think about doing this weekend and taking a look at?
So cancel your plans this weekend, everybody. Come take a look at custom GitPOAPs. No, I'm just kidding. Definitely still have fun this weekend. Custom GitPOAP. So a very common piece of feedback we got from people is there are a lot of contributors, even to their open source software projects, that are not writing code or like sending pull requests on GitHub. And so we built a few features. Like, for example, we built a GitHub bot that allows you to tag issues and other valuable contributions on GitHub, even if the person didn't actually write code. But even furthermore, like people wanted recognition, and meaningful contributions looks different on different projects, especially when you're talking about like, okay, like this project has a big group of translators that help translate, or this project is very design heavy, or this project requires a lot of coordination or support. And so what we decided to do based on this feedback, like I talked to a bunch of different people, and they all they didn't all have different answers, but there was a wide array of answers for like who's the next set of meaningful contributors beyond people writing software. And so instead of building out like 15 specialized tools beyond code that are specialized for these different things, what instead we chose to do is build out what we're calling custom GitPOAPs, which is a generic interface for any project leader, or really anybody, to be able to create a GitPOAP to commemorate and recognize any type of contribution in their project. And you can specify the recipients not only by GitHub username, but also by Ethereum address or ENS, or even email addresses. And so this is like a great tool too to like be accessible, provide recognition that's accessible to people that aren't using GitHub and maybe aren't even Ethereum or Gnosis chain users yet. And so we're excited to have this general tooling be available now. As of Wednesday, it's live on the site. So you can go to gitpoap.io and click the issue GitPOAPs button, and you'll be able to see that you can issue custom GitPOAPs. And people are already creating them for like software releases, and they're able to include their whole team in that in addition to just like the software contributors. And I'm excited to see sort of like how people shape recognition for their projects And we'll continue to listen to feedback and see how we can build the best tools to support the projects that are using GitPOAP.
It's fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to be. I saw that and sort of skimmed the surface on it. I was looking forward to chatting more with you about it today because it seems like it really broadens the application for the GitPOAP, right? Or at least extends it to all the possible ways people like to reward their teams. I'm already thinking about ways we might use it at the different projects. Whether it's Gnosis Chain, I also contribute at Shapeshift. Very, very cool.
Nice.
Yeah, I. So you mentioned email and some of these other examples. Can you walk us through how that would work? So let's just take email as an example. How would a project be able to integrate that into this custom design approach?
Yeah, definitely. So, and I agree. This really broadens like the use case of GitPOAP. And we are being very diligent with the curation of like what's actually worthy of a GitPOAP versus what would just be a POAP or something else. Like we want to still ensure that GitPOAPs are representing meaningful contributions to projects. What we like to say is like time-bound collaborative efforts. And so that's something that we're really holding up to be true. Now to talk about email, right now, in order to mint your GitPOAPs, or I guess before Wednesday, in order to mint your GitPOAPs, what you do is you go to our site and you connect to your Ethereum account, or your address, and then you log in with your GitHub account because GitPOAPs are awarded to your GitHub account based on your GitHub activity. It'll tell you what you're eligible to mint, and then you can mint them essentially from like the eligibility based on your GitHub account over to your Ethereum address. And they're minted on Gnosis Chain, of course. Now what we did was we added another button for you to be able to authenticate your email address and associate that privately with your Ethereum account. And that's on sort of the minter side. And on the issuer side, issuers now can specify a custom list of people based on their email addresses, as well as, of course, their GitHub usernames and their Ethereum accounts. And then that way, yeah, not everybody is using the same like GitHub or even have Ethereum accounts already. And so that way, people can sort of offer recognition in whatever way that they see fit.
Got it. Very cool. I'm gonna have to take a look at this as well and see how we might implement this. I feel like there's a GitPOAP and this type of incentivization tool that also serves as record of on-chain work. Now is like the ideal time to be looking into this and thinking about it, right? I mean, the bear market, obviously, it's somewhat the origin story. It sounds like, when you're looking around and people are trying to tighten the belt, what are some ways to keep people engaged and encourage them and recognize contributions and successes? This seems like an ideal tool.
Exactly. I totally agree. Like, I'm excited. And going back to like why I left Bloomberg and like why I ended up getting involved in the ecosystem is like I really want to build something that's truly meaningful and helpful for people. And I do think that what we're building at GitPOAP is useful for projects and people to get recognition and projects to sort of engage with and like appreciate their either employees or contributors. GitPOAPs can be used like internally at like companies too, not just open source projects now. Something I'm really excited about is, so one of the projects we've onboarded, that we onboarded over the summer is Ledger, the hardware wallet. They have a number of open source repos for like the Ledger Live desktop app and a few other things. And ever since the launch of custom GitPOAPs just 2 days ago, they've created like 2 or 3 custom GitPOAPs for specific releases or efforts for writing some like software components and things. So I'm just really excited to see how people will use this. And I do think it'll really add value to organizations.
That's fantastic. Great timing on the Ledger partnership, right? Everybody's ready for that self-custody. I saw that they had their biggest sale week ever last week, I think.
Oh my gosh, so funny. Makes total sense.
Well, now look, I also saw, maybe rounding things out here. I got a couple more questions, and if there's anybody in the audience who has something that they would like to ask, we can bring up, and we can have a Q&A if we'd like. I guess the other thing I noticed on your Twitter page, and I did drop a few links in the general chat, folks. So I think we got the homepage for GitPOAP, Twitter, and then the latest tweet on the custom POAPs. There's another piece that you'll find on their Twitter if you go there now, and you'll see that it looks like GitPOAPs are going to be involved in certain snapshot strategies. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, definitely. So Snapshot is a tool for essentially holding like votes for different things. It's used by a lot of DAOs. And now the new thing that we announced this week is that now you can use actually any POAP, so not just GitPOAPs, but any POAP as a component of like who can vote on a particular snapshot vote. So you can specify, say, like a set of GitPOAPs or just like any POAP that you see on Gnosis chain, and you can say, okay, like you have this collection of POAPs. I want to see. We need to decide what we want to do with some certain future like feature or something, and I want to have everyone who holds these POAPs to be able to vote and help sort of steer the direction of my project or DAO. Most of the snapshot votes that I'm familiar with now are using ERC20 tokens, so just like any sort of crypto token. And that's a common way for DAOs to be governed, is by these tokens. But I'm very excited about the potential for what can happen with having like maybe supplementary governance of DAOs with contributions as well, in the form of GitPOAPs and other like on-chain reputation applications, in addition to just like the ERC20 token governance. So super excited about that. And it's been a commonly requested thing. I'm excited to see what people do with it.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, man. I'm sort of a bit of a DAO governance nerd. Maybe I know some of the people in the audience. Now, we used to do a weekly show and dive into all sorts of stuff on the snapshot, and I love this, man. Like I have to. My thoughts are not fully formed, but there seems like so many interesting ways that this can be applied, and even like a means by which you can, if you have the intent to do so, right, you can counteract the behavior of certain, whale activity. If it's a specific decision that you want to, scope down to that. And this is a really cool way, it seems like, to gate participation in certain aspects of governance. Again, should that be desired, it just certainly adds a whole nother layer for experimentation here. It's really cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. And like, I don't have all the answers. I would say I'm less of a DAO nerd than you might be, which I actually like. I want to learn from you. Maybe we should have a follow-up conversation around like how this could be most useful. Like, truthfully, I would like us to put the building blocks, or make the building blocks available to people and in a generalized way. And then like, I want to see how people are able to utilize these tools to best serve their projects and their DAOs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's almost, I mean, I'm obviously sort of shooting from the hip here, but I'm thinking, you have specific decisions that require technical expertise. The GitPOAP, being in the wallet of the contributor seems to make total sense there, in terms of just almost like auto gating a technical type of decision that needs to be made. And in that way, it seems like there may be possibility for further decentralization, without having to risk. Like, if you're making highly technical decisions, those aren't necessarily the things you want everybody weighing in on, right? For obvious reasons. But by making those decisions up for a vote, you achieve a greater degree of decentralization. Yeah, man, let's chat after that. I really dig it here, and I know Billy and some others also might have some thoughts around this. We've done a lot of similar conversations in the past. I guess between this and on Snapshot, I guess they've also rolled out this new privacy layer for snapshot voting. So I feel like Snapshot and snapshot strategies are going to get very interesting, continue to get more interesting, and GitPOAP's an awesome way to think about that.
I think so too. Yeah, it's exciting times ahead in a different way than the last 2 weeks have been exciting.
Yeah. I share your optimism. So yes. Well, maybe we wrap up there. Tell me what is something I always like asking, people I chat with, what is or something or what are some things that keep you positive, optimistic, and bullish despite all the other craziness in the space? What's the bright light for you these days, man?
That's a good question. This might sound too generic, but truthfully, just like the people in the community. Like I know all this craziness is going on. I get all these like news alerts about how we need more adults running this industry and blah blah blah. But it's not really my experience. Like I feel like truthfully, my experience in this ecosystem is extremely positive, and it's really a minority of my experience. Like all this craziness that's happened over the last couple of weeks and like these scams and whatnot. I think maybe I think I've found a pocket of like really, and I think this is the core of it. I think like really the core of the sort of like Web3 ecosystem, Ethereum, Gnosis chain, like the core of these people that are building are really solid and kind-hearted and passionate and driven people. And it's just amazing to be a part of this ecosystem. And like truthfully, it bums me out that the mainstream media only picks up on the crazy stories, because like there should be media about how like passionate and amazing the core of this community is. And I think that if you're listening to this and you don't have the same experience that I do, like keep showing up to community calls like this, keep jumping into Discord servers and finding people that are passionate and see what projects need and just start working on it. The way I got involved in ETHStaker was they needed somebody to help run a trivia show. And I'm not particularly passionate about trivia, but I was like, sure, like I'm happy to help out. And now I've made a ton of good friends through it, and I'm working in this ecosystem full time. And so I would say, yeah, the big thing for me is just the community and the people that are around. It really makes me excited about the future and have a lot of fun along the way.
Man, I think we're like living in certain side by side timelines. First of all, I agree. I couldn't agree more with what you just said. But I got to imagine Dosh and some of these other guys are interested in maybe falling out of their. I ended up meeting a lot of these folks. They're doing a trivia show just about this time last year, actually. So interesting.
No way.
Yeah. Anyways, it was funny because we were using POAPs and all sorts of crazy stuff there as well. I mean, anyways, and I do have some trivia questions, by the way, for everybody at the end. I know we have those every week, so I got two for you at the end of this end of the show today. But
Nice.
yeah, I agree. I'll just build out a little on the last thing as far as the people. I couldn't agree more. I think that whether it's the folks here at Gnosis Chain or elsewhere, I find myself surrounded by the same people for an extended period of time in this space, and they're the ones that keep me positive, right? And I think just adding to that, the opportunity to meet some people in person and connect with them. I don't know if you're headed to ETH Denver, but for me, these sorts of in-person events are a great thing to look forward to as well. And I hope to meet you sometime in person, Colfax, as well as everybody here. It's been great having you on to share with us today.
Thanks. I appreciate it. It's been a blast coming on. I will be at ETH Denver, so we should definitely meet up in person.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, it's crazy how parallel journeys we've had, and I'm excited for many others to get involved and yeah, grow this ecosystem and just like keep having fun together. So thanks again for having me on. This was an absolute blast.
Absolutely, Colfax. We'll have to have you back soon. And everybody definitely head over to gitpoap.io. The website's awesome, man. I mean, there's so much great stats about what you guys are up to there. So everybody check out the website for sure. Drop some comments in general if you got questions. And actually, before we do that, let me see. Do you have a moment, Colfax, if we got anybody with questions who would like to come up and ask you?
Yep. Yeah. If anybody has any questions, I guess raise your hand or put them. I don't know. You can handle logistics, but I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Okay. I want to make sure we don't drop that off in case somebody would like here. So yeah, folks in the audience, if you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand and give it a good, maybe it's a 10 seconds here of silence, and we'll pull you up if you got questions. All right, then, folks. This is John. This is streaming over to YouTube. So if you want to watch this back or share with other people, feel free to do so. We'll be pushing out some highlights as well in the next couple of weeks. So make sure to watch the Gnosis Twitter and follow GitPOAP on Twitter as well. GM Colfax.
I got a quick question for Colfax. Hey, Colfax.
Yeah, what's up? Hey.
I think GitPOAP is super cool, and GitHub is kind of like, if you know anything about open source communities and maintainers and stuff like that, it's like in my view, a precursor to kind of DAO governance. Like you have these contributors, and you can see all the activity on GitHub. So it's almost like on-chain analytics in a way. I guess I'm wondering, like, have you thought of, or does GitPOAP operate as a DAO, first of all? And have you thought about governance in that way? Do you guys operate as a DAO?
Yeah, both good questions. So GitPOAP is not a DAO. There was a period of time early on that we were considering being a DAO, but then I was given some good advice by now one of our investors and a friend of mine about focus and when you're building something complex, like really like narrowing in your focus on something and focusing really on one thing at a time. And it really resonated with me. Like I was thinking, like my original idea was like, let's be a DAO, let's possibly like raise money through a token, and let's do this and do that, like do all this new stuff at the same time. And truthfully, the decision we ended up making was instead, let's focus on one core innovation, which is bringing contributions on chain, and let's do everything else the traditional way, so that we have like fewer barriers to worry about, and we can just like do everything as a cookie cutter. But the one thing that we do differently than other companies and projects that exist is like, we're going to focus on this innovation, which is like bringing contributions on chain. And I feel like that was actually a really good decision for us up until this point, because it's allowed us to benefit from all the structures that are put in place for like existing companies and things like that. And allowed us to really focus on what our core innovation is, and which is, again, issuing GitPOAPs and on-chain reputation and credentials. And in the future, I do see a possible world in which maybe we'll DAOify. And as a nature of like what we're doing, I mean, we're essentially building a record of like who the meaningful contributors are in the space. And so that could, and we just talked about governance. So like, who knows? I'm not, there's no plans for this anytime soon. But I could see like whatever ends up being the best step in the future, like we'll end up taking it. But right now we're not a DAO, and I think it actually was the right decision for us.
Yeah, I mean, DAOs don't always make sense. It's not like a panacea.
Right.
But I guess I'm thinking about GitPOAPs and just also like non-financialized governance. And I'm waiting for someone to build tooling that like marries the beautiful world of GitHub with DAO governance. So like you could have a GitPOAP that allows you rights to do a pull request for a DAO, and that's governance for a DAO. So it all happens through GitHub, which would be really cool. But I haven't really seen anyone do it.
Yeah, what you said there at the very beginning of your first statement was like open source and on GitHub is kind of like open source governance is kind of like a DAO in and of itself. And I think that that's really true. And like, I'm excited to see, I really think like GitPOAP can be a component in that. And already, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this, but there's this project guild.xyz, and they're all about creating sort of like community membership and things and gated access to various platforms. And they do have, we integrated with them about a month ago, and POAPs are integrated as well. And there's a way that you can create a gated GitHub repo through Gnosis chain, or sorry, through Gnosis chain. Gnosis chain's on the mind, through Guild. And so there's not a lot of customized features around like, okay, you can like submit a pull request only if you have a GitPOAP, but at least there's a building block there for using GitPOAPs to gate private repos. And I'm excited to see as the tooling evolves and to contribute to the evolution of how contributor-based DAOs can actually become a real thing.
Cool. Thanks a lot.
Of course. Thanks for coming up.
I love it. And I'd love to have a conversation all about non-financialized governance, John, to be honest. I enjoy that. I imagine maybe Colfax is something you've considered with your team, because it seems like you have an interesting, I don't want to say a solution, but interesting option down that route.
Yeah, definitely. It's something that's on our minds to explore, and it's a concept that I think is interesting, and I'm excited to keep thinking about it and chat with more people about it.
Is there anybody who has any further thoughts about that? I mean, we can continue chatting about this if we'd like to, or a separate question. I'll just create some space here again if anybody would like to raise their hand or hop up. All right, then. Colfax, I don't want to hold you any longer today. I know it's almost the top of the hour, so I'm going to give you a salute, sir. Have an excellent weekend, and thanks again for joining us today.
Hey, right back at you. Thanks so much for having me. Bye-bye.
Cheers. All right, GM, everybody. We do have a few more minutes before the top of the hour here. John, I don't know if you want to hop up here. We can get through a couple of news items if you'd like to, folks, just to keep up with the latest in the Gnosis chain ecosystem. I'm going to just share a document in Gen Chat right now, actually, for everybody to take a look at. A couple slides. It actually doesn't look like I can upload a document there. Let me see. On YouTube, Sapote, I think, is going to have our slides up there. I have a deck that's a nice distillation of stuff that's been going on around the ecosystem, and also some tweets with some hyperlink tweets. So in other words, you can scroll through this deck and take a look at the latest stuff and click into it and go straight over to Twitter if you'd like to. But let me see if either Armag or Dash, John, if y'all could ping me if there's a spot that we could upload a PDF and just direct people there. We can track along with some of the stuff we have to share with them.
I think we could share it in the general channel, but sorry, I was a little distracted. Can you tell me which PDF you'd like to link?
Yeah, so I don't think I can upload a PDF in Gen Chat, but I shared it in the Telegram. Oops, looks like Armag. I popped it over your way. It's also, I think, it's in the group chat there. It's Gnosis DAOcast episode 4. Might be a nice little piece for people to take with them if they'd like. You know, John, I tried to synthesize a bunch of stuff in the last couple of weeks because I know it has been a couple since we've been able to share the DAOcast, the latest from around the GC space due to sound issues last week. So this deck is kind of a synthesis the last couple of weeks, a bit of a mashup. And we touched on credible neutrality, touched on new integrations and folks that are deploying new cool stuff on chain. We got some stuff about Gnosis builders. Of course, our last episode with Nethermind, we got the short vid highlights linked up there. But I don't know. You're the man, John. What do you think? What is the most important thing you think people should know about going into the weekend here about Gnosis Chain?
Yeah, I mean, for the last few weeks, we have definitely been pounding the pavement about credible neutrality. And I mean, it's kind of incredible. The universe just keeps handing us these events that make it so easy to talk about credible neutrality and the importance of decentralization. So, I mean, I also feel like a lot of terms get thrown around, like decentralization, credible neutrality. So it's important to define what these concepts are so that they're easily understandable and like digestible. So, what is credible neutrality? It's basically, about accessibility. So Gnosis Chain is committed to being a very accessible network. So without privilege or prejudice, anyone anywhere in the world can use Gnosis Chain. But it also means that we're committed to this idea that we'll never have a bias as to who should be able to use Gnosis Chain, but also which content can be shared on Gnosis Chain. So all content is created equally. We don't have a bias in that regard. So, and we're also committed to being the most resilient network. So how do we do that? It's through having hundreds of thousands of validators all around the world. Right now, we have over 100K validators, third to Bitcoin and Ethereum as being the most decentralized in that regard. So yeah, I hope people aren't tired by our pounding on the pavement with this kind of narrative, but I think it's really important, especially in regards to things that have happened in the last week, and also with Tornado Cash and OFAC sanction list and censorship on Ethereum. So I feel like that there's a narrative shift, kind of like a broad narrative shift going on right now in crypto, and we definitely want to participate in that and try and push this narrative. So I would say, for me personally, that's definitely the most important thing right now.
Fantastic, John. Can you still hear me there? I had a little bit of a blip.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. No, I just want to echo your early statement as well, that it does seem like the universe continues to send opportunities for shilling stuff that matters, which can't complain, right? I mean, but whether it's credible neutrality, self-custody, the stuff that in a sense sometimes people are not interested in paying attention to when number go up, now people realize what really matters. And I just wanted to re-emphasize, folks, if you 2 weeks ago, despite the sound quality sort of wrecking our day, I had a fantastic time talking to the people at Nethermind, and those two highlights we chose specifically for folks that might be curious about how to actually get into and become a part of what Gnosis Chain is up to in terms of establishing this credible neutrality, getting in the trenches and running a node, becoming a validator, and just sort of learning about what that might entail. I really, I'm saying I don't think it's ever been easier, because I am not a technical person, and Sedged from Nethermind made it felt accessible to me, right? So I don't know. I just wanted to fold that in and chill a little bit. If you're able to find, if you head over to Nethermind, or rather, let me just say this: if you're in the audience or listen to it after the fact, go to Gnosis Chain Twitter, scroll down, and watch those two short videos, and then click over and check out Sedged. It's really cool stuff. I enjoyed it. And John, are you you had a? Do you use Sedged, or what is your setup, man?
No, I haven't used it yet. I have a DApp node, but right now I'm kind of like sitting on the sidelines and waiting for the merge to happen, because it takes a level of maintenance right now that I just don't have time for. So, but I will definitely be using Sedge once I get up and running.
One of the things about it that made me feel better, obviously, was just because it can be an intimidating thing if it's not something you've done before, looking into validation, is that they have the ability to sort of run this on pretty much any type of device and get set up on the test net. So you really have like a way to scale into the whole enterprise.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm super excited about stuff like running a node on a Raspberry Pi, or trying to find a super cheap laptop or computer to run nodes on, and making that into just like a DIY project.
Yeah, man. I had this Intel Nook from years ago, and I wasn't using it. I was like, this is why I still had this. Is why I haven't thrown it away. I use it for this.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think you could do it on a pretty cheap setup.
Very cool. Well, I'm happy to. Do you want to get into the news again for maybe until 10 after, or what do you feel like, John? I can do it either way.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. So, folks, if you're watching on YouTube here, if we're able to link up that PDF, I'll just cover a couple things that are here in the deck. So, the graph here, there's a tweet linked up that they are announcing their very first chain is, in fact, Gnosis chain after mainnet as far as the integration of the subgraph here. And I don't know, John, can you speak to that a little bit in terms of this this graph announcement?
Just give me a second to pull this up. Sorry, I don't have your live stream, so I just want to see what visuals you got going on.
And I'm riffing off of the Substack here. Actually, I apologize for putting you on the spot here. It looks like there was an announcement from the graph, and this was talking about an integration with, or at least their specific partnership with Gnosis chain. And I was curious. This is linked up in the slideshow that we'll share. I don't know if there's any further insights that you wanted to share on that, or.
I got you. I mean, we've been working with the graph for a while, and this is a big announcement from them. We're very pleased to be the first integration for the graph, and they have plans to integrate, I think, a lot more chains in the future. But we're very pleased to work with them. But yeah, I guess I don't have any more specifics than that.
It's all good, man. I'll go down the line quickly here. I also want to share with people that Hedgie Finance has launched their V2. If you're familiar with Hedgie, they've done a lot of work, DAO to DAO collaborations, treasury management solutions for DAOs, and they run their platform on Gnosis chain in addition to some others, but they really are well embedded, I think, with a lot of the DAOs and indie builders here in the Gnosis chain community. So they have this DAO to DAO swap. I guess this is their new tooling, helping to bring DAOs together and help to exchange value. If you're interested in anything along these lines, I know they also have a Telegram group that's getting set up specifically around the Gnosis chain ecosystem. Another recent announcement was from Azuro. Now this, of course, is a betting protocol, and they recently passed a $1 million volume milestone. And so their platform, bookmaker.xyz, bookmaker.xyz, their DApp runs on Gnosis chain. They got a lot of sports betting going on over there at Azuro. So if you're a sports bettor, particularly around soccer, you want to check out Azuro. Also to note, the Gnosis builders have launched their Twitter page, and so you want to make sure you take a look and follow them at Gnosis Builders. Again, the slideshow that we'll be sharing and that you'll hopefully be able to see on YouTube shows two recent tweets from there. One for the Gnosis faucet, where you can go and claim some XDAI so that you can transact on the network. Of course, it's sub-cent transaction fees, so very cheap here on Gnosis chain. The other having to do with the fiat on-ramp directly to XDAI. So check out the Gnosis Builders on Twitter. They also have a great infographic that they shared. Gnosis chain ecosystem that's up on the Twitter. So you want to take a look at that. And if you have C projects that you like, or you have questions about, I think this Discord is a great place to ask around. Last but not least here, I want to remind people about Succinct Labs. This was one of our early interviews. We had Puma the Uma join us and tell us about the trust minimized bridges that they're building between, or working to research and then build prototypes for, between Gnosis Chain and Ethereum mainnet. So definitely check out Succinct Labs on Twitter. And they announced recently the launch of their demo, which is the first consensus bridge between Ethereum mainnet and Gnosis chain. I guess last but not least, would be the announcement that, of course, Gnosis adjacent CowSwap has launched its grant program at the end of last month. So they're getting ready to do a lot of awesome stuff building around the Cow protocol, and want to make sure people are aware of that. They're at CowSwap on Twitter. And in conclusion here, if you haven't taken a look at the praise system, we would encourage you also to take a look at the videos. They're on the Gnosis Chain YouTube. We also have the highlights on Twitter. If you are interested in joining the validator program here, they have a great rewards system built in. The tooling, of course, built Web3 native from the Commons stack and been used by other projects that operate in and around Gnosis Chain. So check out the videos again on YouTube to learn about the praise rewards system that operates here in the Discord.
Yeah, if you're a validator, sorry, if you're a validator, drop into the validator channel if you're not already there, and just request the validator role, and we'll get you set up on the praise reward system.
Fantastic. Well, that's all I got for this week, John and everybody. Jim, for joining us, and I appreciate y'all. Hope y'all have a good weekend. We'll be back in 2 weeks again with another DAOcast. I think we'll be doing it out of the Discord again. And you can catch everything after the fact on the Gnosis Chain YouTube and watch the Twitter. We'll be pushing out highlights from the interview today with GitPOAP, probably in the middle of next week. So everybody have a good GM, a good weekend. John, appreciate you. Thanks for hopping up.
Thanks, T. Wells. Thanks, everyone, for coming.
GM, everybody.